Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stalking the Wild Autoharp interview edition. This is going to be my third interview, and I'm really excited today because we've been planning this one for a couple of months. And today's guest is Greg Schreiber. We've seen some beautiful Autoharps appear from made by Greg Schreiber over the past 10 years or so. And before that, there were other Autoharp components being made. I'm not going to get into too much detail about the history because it all gets told in this interview. So I wanted to just set it up for you, and we're going to go. So with no further ado, here's Greg Schreiber. Greg, welcome to Stalking the Wild Autoharp.
Hello, Hal. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, it's great to see you. And I have never actually had the pleasure in person of meeting you. I can remember like 12 years ago, I would talk to Todd Crowley a lot about auto harps, and because how many people can you geek out with about auto harps in the world? And
or maybe
we would discuss it, and Todd would say, yeah, Greg Schreiber's making those fine tuners. Greg Schreiber's making those pickups. And that, I think, is the first place I ever heard about you, that you were making, for the Luthiers, you were making fine tuners. And I think, was it pickups first?
Actually, fine tuners first. I was making them for George Orthy. I think around the mid 80s is when I started that. And George needed those for his harps, so I started making fine tuners. I was in the manufacturing industry back then as a full-time occupation. The pickups came, I don't know, maybe 3, 4, 5 years after that. He asked me to try and make a pickup for him, and I figured out how to do that, and the rest is history.
And I understand that your fine tuners are an improvement on the Oscar Schmidt style fine tuner.
I may be a little biased, but yes, they tend to work like a fine tuner should, whereas the Oscar Schmidt, I think, from my experience, tends to bind up and not adjust freely the way that I think they were intended to. But the design of the cam is not proper in my eyes. So whenever I did,
don't yours do something different with the way they rock back?
The cam itself has a flat bottom, and it rides on a little shelf, I'm going to call it, on the rail. The Oscar Schmidt fine tuner kind of has an angular underside that goes in against a corner on the rail and tends to bind up on that angular area. Do you know what I mean, Hal? Or
yeah, I do. I do, yeah. Do your tuners go on? Can you put your tuners on a Schmidt?
On an Oscar Schmidt B model, I have a specific fine tuner that Chuck Daniels and I worked together to design, and it effectively replaces the aluminum anchor bar that is, standard on a Model B. You pull that anchor bar out, place this unit in. I think there are 7 screws that hold it in place. The cool part about that, a couple of features that are cool. It uses the same cams that I was discussing, so it's a very mechanically sound piece. It also incorporates a bridge rod, which is very important. On the standard Oscar Schmidts, you end up with the fine tuners kind of stair-stepped, and one string high, a couple low, a couple more high. So when you try to dampen that, you have strings ringing through. With
right.
The bridge rod there on the base of the instrument, yeah, you get a more flat plane. Also, the bridge rod is the pocket that it sits in is tapered downward on about the last 8 or 10 bass strings. So you've got these really fat bass strings and little tiny treble strings. So the felt's going to hit the top of the big fat bass string first.
Right.
So you've got to overcome that and push those big fat bass strings down in order to dampen all the little tiny strings. Okay. So what I've done with this is ramped that area down so the tops of the big fat bass strings sit level with the tops of the smaller strings. So you have a nice flat string bed. So when you push the felt down, you're hitting all the strings. In theory, you're hitting all the strings at the same time, as opposed to having to push the big fat ones down first.
And that's adjustable based on the string schedule?
No, it's fixed. It's in the program that I use to machine it with. If I were to have something, really special that somebody wanted a gigantic bass string versus what the standard is, I could modify that, or you could modify it upon installation with a little round file. You could lower that even more if you had to. So it's kind of a fixed thing, that ramp that's in the base of the fine tuner rail. My other fine tuners, I've had folks put them on Model A's. I think a few folks have put them onto chroma harps. So they are adaptable for other models of harps, although not specifically designed for them. They may take some modifications of the lower bridge area in order to mount those onto something like a Model A or a chroma harp. But it has been done, can be done.
So after the fine tuners came the pickups.
Yes.
I have heard through the grapevine that you use a turntable.
I do. Actually, I'm on my second one now. I wore the first one out. I think I paid $49 for it on eBay a long time ago.
So we're talking, just so that people know what I'm talking about. You wind wire around a core, and it has to go around and around and around and around. So you use a record player.
Yes, exactly.
You mount it on there and spin it and wind this.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to keep the wires from crossing, or can they go?
No, there's effectively a spool or a bobbin type of fixture that I've made up. So I'm sandwiching a piece of the magnetic strip, which is 1/8 of an inch thick and 1/2 of an inch wide. I'm sandwiching that between two pieces of plastic that extend beyond that 1/2 inch. So in between these two pieces of plastic is a smaller area that's the magnet. So it's effectively a big spool type thing. So the wire kind of goes wherever it wants to inside of that as it's happily winding away at 78 RPMs.
78, okay.
That's it, yeah.
All right. So, wow. And you can do those in custom lengths, right?
I can, yes. Up to a maximum of about 10.5 inches, I'd guess, maybe 11. You're working within the confines of the record player.
I was going to say, what about the 12-inch LP?
Well, yeah. There's a little bit of extra for the spool itself, or the bottom thing. So you're kind of limited by things sticking up on the top of the turntable.
Well, I've used them on several of my harps, and they're definitely a step above the Oscar Schmidt offering. Yeah,
there was just some off-the-cuff engineering there. When I first was making those prototypes for George Orthy, he had Tom Fladmark apprenticing with him at the time, and George had me wind several different pickups. I think one had maybe 300 wraps of the wire around it, another one 400, another one 500, another one 600. So basically we were just experimenting with how much wire should we put around this thing to make it sound good. And George and Tom arrived at 500 wraps. So the pickups that I manufacture have 500 wraps of the super tiny, thinner than your hair wire wrapped around the So
is that based on, you sit there and count 1, 2, 3, or is it based on time and 33 RPM? 78.
I wish I could show you my rigging right now, but it's an old counter, a magnetic counter off of a piece of exercise equipment. I think it was a stair step thing where you pushed up and down on these things. Anyway, there was a little switch and a readout that counted how many steps you were taking.
Okay.
Was getting junked, so I adapted it and put it onto my record player. And
every time the sensor goes by,
exactly. I've just got a little magnet on the edge of the turntable platen, and that's what triggers the count.
So
it's pretty high tech.
After you did, first of all, I'm trying to put the sequence of events. Mm-hmm. This was you started making these things before you were building Autoharps. Is that correct?
Way before, yes. At the time, I was, as I said, working in a manufacturing facility, high-tech computer-controlled machines, lathes, milling machines, and so forth. That was my first career was as a toolmaker machinist. And George knew that. George Orthy knew that. I had known him for 15 years prior to that. As a teenage kid, I knew him. So whenever he needed parts for, at first, dulcimers, he was building dulcimers. So he needed some jigs, fixtures, that kind of things for the dulcimers, which I was able to help him with. When the fine tuners came around, that was my next knock on the door. He wanted fine tuners, and then pickups later on. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And then you got into an apprenticeship.
Yes, and that was I believe it was about 12 years ago. So that makes it do the math, Hal.
12 years.
It was the fall of 2007 whenever I started to apprentice with George, and I did that for about 2.5 to 3 years on a part-time basis. And then in 2010, I was in my own shop here working at that point. In 2011, then I went full-time at this. So I've been at this going on 8 years this August.
What's the scoop with continuing George's design with the logo and everything?
George allowed me to use his registered trademark design for the sound hole and advertising and so forth. And since that, I think it's been about a year now, I have taken over that trademark logo. It came up for renewal, and George signed off on it. So I now own that trademark logo. So that will continue.
Well, it sure makes a handsome harp.
But thank you.
That's for sure. And you've got one there to show us, right?
Oh, yes. Well, this is on a harp body that I'm just working on now. But so yeah, this is the registered trademark logo that I plan to continue to use.
Very nice.
The one on the table here,
yeah,
is the harp that I'm just finishing up. It's East Indian rosewood on the back and sides, and it's a Western red cedar top. Now the top and the sides are black lacquered, so you can't really see the grain of the wood. But the customer wanted a black harp. The covers on this are East Indian rosewood. The bars are actually walnut with a stain on to simulate the East Indian rosewood. And it's single AD, and great looking harp. Gone to far away to Italy.
There must be with rosewood. There's import export stuff.
There is some import stuff that I have to get it through a supplier who is importing it as a product other than rosewood logs or boards. It has to be processed in India into some useful product, such as flooring or wall paneling, instrument panels, something like that. So the gentleman that imports it for me is he's an Indian citizen also, living in New Jersey, and his business is importing woods such as this. So he jumps through all the hoops to get it in here. As far as shipping it back out, I provide, if the customer wants it, I will provide a written documentation that it was imported to me properly.
So you've been building harps for about 12 years.
Yes.
And you are do you work by yourself in your laboratory there?
Well, in for the harp building and pickup winding and manufacturing of the fine tuners, pretty much by myself. The string winding part of the business, my wife Deb is helping me out there, or actually she's doing all the work, and I'm just telling her what to do.
Well, and this is what I think I've mentioned it in numerous emails to you over the years, is I don't know how you do it. Like you can keep up on building harps, making fine tuners, not only for yourself, but for other luthiers, strings for everybody, and the pickups for everybody. And that's a pretty hefty multitasking workload you got going there.
It is a bit. I don't tell somebody that I'm going to have something done in 2 weeks. If they order a harp, it might be 6 months or 8 months that I would tell them until completion. It may only be 3 or 4, but I don't overbook myself in that respect. I try to keep up with demand, but yet stay sane.
I guess we should explain how you've picked up the string winding just recently, like within the past year.
With the string winding, I obviously wanted to have good strings for my instruments, and Tom Fladmark had been providing those for a number of years to me and everybody else. When he decided it was time to retire and get back to building some harps, he wanted somebody to take that over that he felt knew what was going on. I spent some time with Tom, apprenticed with him back maybe 2-3 years ago for a few months to get the hang of it. And then whenever he did sell last September of 2018 is when I assumed ownership of the company and started Schreiber Autoharp strings. Same processes that Tom had used for years, same suppliers for the raw materials, which, by the way, are very important. That's to me, any material that you're making anything out of, you could get cheap or you can get the good stuff. So Tom always used the good stuff, and I plan to do the same. So Tom wanted somebody that could take it over and he felt comfortable with. And Tom's been a great friend, not just as somebody that's selling me the string winding business, but I've known Tom for quite a few years and have spent a lot of good times with him. And we like to get together and compare geeky luthier notes every now and then.
Well, and that's one thing that struck me about, I don't know if you know this about me, but 12 years ago and more, I was doing kind of what Chuck does, just working on harps, restringing them, refelting them, putting Buck Lumbert's custom chord bars onto them for people who wanted them, doing conversions, stuff like that. And people were shipping me their harps and shipping them back. And I had a situation where my tools were stolen, and all of the luthiers got together and sent me tools, to put me back in business, and there's so many other kinds of business where people go, all right, Hal's out of business, less competition. And the Autoharp community everybody is so mutually supportive.
I agree. It's amazing. The industry that I came from, the machine shop industry, was cutthroat. You did not share any secret with anybody. And the Autoharp community, exactly like you said, it's warm, open, welcoming community, willing to share. I mean, anytime any of the other luthiers are in the area, I always invite them into my shop if they want to see how I'm doing things, what I've got going on here, and they do the same. So we're all in this together to make great music. So
yeah, it's a fantastic thing to be part of, and I'm glad that I did my little 3-month stint at Pete's shop and got kind of this behind the scenes look at it.
Pete's a good guy. I respect everything he does, and he's a great friend, a great customer.
You don't want to play for us today.
Well, how good is your editing?
How good is my editing? Well, this is a warts and all show.
It is? Okay. Is that enough so you can do something with it? Or
Very nice. Any power, yeah.
In there, especially in the A part, but yeah, different chord bar arrangement, man, gets you for a while.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that.
Use only the best 10 seconds of that, okay?
Okay. All right. Okay.
Video or audio to you.
So, Greg, give us your contact information, your website.
Sure. My website is www.schreiberautoharps.com, and that's SCHREIB as in boy, ER, autoharps.com. And my email is greg@schreiberautoharps.com. If you'd rather reach me by telephone, that's area code 717-418-2775. And by all means, leave a message. That's a cell phone. If I'm making noise in the shop, I won't hear it ring. So let a message and I can call you right back.
Cool. And I'll put a link to your information there in the comments section to the video.
All right, great.
And I'm going to create Greg, thanks so much for being on the show. And it's super nice to talk to you. And I look forward to meeting you in person soon.
One of these days. Thank you for all that you do. Take care.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
So there you have it. Thanks so much, Greg, for coming on Stalking the Wild Autoharp and sharing your story with us. And next week on Stalking the Wild Autoharp, we're going to have a video that is all about an Autoharp that actually got the wrong strings and how I had to get the right strings, special, custom ordered for it, and get them on there. So you're going to see that whole process. It's a real interesting, one-of-a-kind of Autoharp that I'm going to share with you, and the whole experience of getting custom strings made for it and on that, and what a difference they make. So stay tuned for that. Remember, folks, if you like Stalking the Wild Autoharp, you can support this program by going over to my Patreon and kicking in a few bucks. Or if you go to my website, there's some other ways that you can contribute too. That's all on the Stalking the Wild Autoharp page, where you will find a master index to all things Stalking the Wild Autoharp. You'll find links to all 100 plus episodes, so you can find what you're looking for a little bit easier. And also remember, please, that I teach lessons online via Skype. If you need any help with your Autoharp playing, you can contact me through my website, halweeks.com, and I can certainly help you with whatever kind of Autoharp playing you want to do. So until next time, this is Hal Weeks for Stalking the Wild Autoharp. Thanks again, Greg Schreiber, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.